Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a big one, the CSC's revised rules on administrative dishonesty. We're going to break down exactly what this means for government employees. So, what does it take for a government employee to get fired for being dishonest? I mean, where is that line actually drawn? That's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going to explore how the Philippine Civil Service Commission defines and, maybe more importantly, penalizes dishonesty in the ranks. All right, here's our game plan. We'll start with the absolute basics, what dishonesty even means in this context. Then we'll get into the three different levels of offenses, how the CSC figures out which is which, what the penalties look like, and we'll wrap up by talking about why all of this is so critical. Okay, first things first, let's really nail down this core concept. When the Civil Service Commission talks about dishonesty, what are they actually talking about? Yeah, that's a lot of legal jargon, right? But if you boil it all down, it comes to one crucial point. Dishonesty in this context isn't just telling a fib. It's about the intent to deceive. That's the magic word here, intent. It's about a deliberate concealment or distortion of the truth. Now, here's the full text, straight from the source. And you can see, buried in all that official language, is an idea that's really important. The rules aren't just looking at the act itself. They're trying to get inside the person's head to understand their state of mind and whether they knew what they were doing was wrong. And you know, that focus on a person's intent leads us right to our next point. The CSC is smart about this. They know not all dishonest acts are created equal. So they've broken them down into a really clear framework with three distinct levels. And this table here lays it out beautifully. You've got three tiers: serious, less serious, and simple dishonesty. And just look at the penalties for a first offense. They're no joke. We're talking everything from a 1-month suspension all the way up to outright dismissal from the service. The stakes get higher and higher at each level. So the big question is, how does the CSC decide if something is serious, less serious, or just simple dishonesty? Well, it all comes down to the specific circumstances of what happened. This is where the rules get really interesting and, well, really specific. Let's start at the top with the most severe category. This slide shows you the official text, but what we're going to do is pull out the key factors that automatically kick an offense up into that serious dishonesty classification. So, you see, it's not just about the lie itself. It's about the impact of that lie. The rules ask some very pointed questions. Did the act cause grave prejudice to the government? We're talking serious harm here. Did the person abuse their authority? Was it something like cheating on a civil service exam? If the answer is yes to these kinds of questions, that's what lands it in the most serious bucket. Okay, moving on to the middle tier, less serious dishonesty. As we look at the rules on this slide, you'll start to see how much nuance is built into this system. See the difference? Here, maybe the act caused some damage, but it wasn't bad enough to be called grave. Or perhaps it did involve money, but the person wasn't what they call an accountable officer, someone officially in charge of funds, and, importantly, they gave the money back. The severity gets dialed back when the impact is smaller or when these specific conditions aren't met. And that brings us to the final category, simple dishonesty. Let's take a look at the circumstances that define this lightest level of offense. This category is really for those acts where the dishonesty is kind of disconnected from the person's actual job. A perfect example is falsifying a document, but the information wasn't related to their employment, and, this is key, it didn't cause any damage to anyone. So we've got the classifications down. Now let's talk about the consequences. What is the actual price a government employee pays? Because it's not always as simple as a fixed penalty. For those lower two tiers, less serious and simple dishonesty, the penalty isn't set in stone. It operates on a sliding scale. The final decision lands somewhere between a minimum and maximum penalty, and it all depends on whether there are mitigating factors that lessen the offense or aggravating factors that make it worse. It's a system designed to be flexible. But for the most serious offenses, the consequences go way, way beyond just losing your job. This is where the penalties get truly life-changing. And this is what I mean. A dismissal for serious dishonesty comes with all these other things called accessory penalties. We're talking about being permanently banned from ever holding a public office again. Your retirement benefits? Gone. You can't even take civil service exams anymore. It is, for all intents and purposes, the permanent end of a career in public service. So, let's zoom out for a second and think about the big picture. Why go to all this trouble? Why have these incredibly detailed rules? Well, it matters. A lot. At the end of the day, these rules aren't just about punishing people. They're a powerful statement. They set a clear standard for the kind of integrity that's needed to keep the public's trust. The core idea is that the government has to be a reflection of the people it serves, and that requires a higher standard. So, let's recap the big takeaways here. 1. Dishonesty under these rules is all about the intent to deceive. 2. The seriousness of the act isn't just about what happened, but about the specific circumstances around it. 3. The consequences are real, and they can be absolutely career-ending. And finally, all of this creates a clear, predictable system to hold people accountable. Which leaves us with this fundamental question, right? Rules like these are really one of society's answers to this. They form the very foundation of a civil service that we can trust, and they're designed to make sure that the people holding positions of power are actually worthy of that trust.